The Gospel according to Matthew in the 24th chapter. If you're not familiar with it, we have a 3-year cycle of chosen texts. This is cycle A, which is Matthew, Mark is B, and Luke is C. We just finished Luke, and now we're into Matthew. And so most of the Gospel's texts will be, in this next year, will be from Matthew. So here we go. Jesus said to the disciples, "About that day and hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. For as the days of Noah were, so will be the coming of the Son of Man. For as in the days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered the ark. And they knew nothing until the flood came and swept them all away. So too will be the coming of the Son of Man. Then two will be in the field, one will be taken, one will be left. 2 women will be grinding meal together, one will be taken and one will be left. Keep awake, therefore, for you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known in what part of the night the thief was coming, he would have stayed awake and would not have let his house be broken into. Therefore you must be ready, for the Son of Man is coming in an hour you do not expect." The Gospel of the Lord. Well, I discovered this morning that Dustin and I had never met, but we have. He's been on our farm, done farm work. So he knows more about me than I do. Not necessarily. Well, if you think back sometime, and I think Andrea, I'm thinking of you particularly, think back about 6-7 months ago and how it was. Because it wasn't very long ago, and it was about 6-7 months ago that I had a young woman that became acquainted with, and she was about 7 months pregnant. And so we had a conversation about the pregnancy and about whether they're going to choose, whether they chose to find the gender or not, and all the other details, and all the things that go on with that, and so forth, and all the things that need to be done, and so forth. And so she was telling me about how she'd fix this room up for the child. It was her first child, and doing all these things and so forth. And so she was about 6 weeks or so out, or maybe a little bit, about 6 weeks out from birth. And we got into this conversation that I hear quite frequently from women who are pregnant. Oh, so you maybe can identify with this when you get to that point. Well, I'd sure like to get rid of this load. Gets to be kind of a drag. It gets to be kind of a nuisance, kind of a hassle, kind of gets in the way, kind of all kinds of things. And so this person's saying all about how they're ready. They're ready to have this child. Everything in the house is ready. Grandparents and other people that are interested are all ready. Everybody's in anticipation. It is this kind of readiness that Jesus really is talking about here as he tells these parables and these stories. To be so ready that no matter what happens, and be so much in anticipation that it's coming, that it's going to be here, and it'll be right here for us. And so for all of us males who haven't had that experience, I guess, we need to have that kind of sense of readiness, of being ready. And most of us, I suppose, lead a life in which we are relatively ready for a variety of things. And now when we come into this season of Advent, we are getting ready for Christmas. We are getting ready for all the things that are going to transpire. So we're getting ready for the coming of the Christ child, and of course that is part of Advent, is getting ready for this. But when Jesus says to us about you don't know when, it's kind of disconcerting. Because most of us, when we're ready, we know that, well, it's going to happen pretty soon. For a pregnant woman, we know that, well, we've got a date, and, well, on either side of that date, that child is going to be born. We have some gauge about when that was going to happen. But Jesus tells us, don't know. And there's been all kinds of people who speculated for 2,000 years when this is all going to take place. Hasn't happened. And so what? So what's going to happen? It's still so open-ended. So it makes us, in a sense, probably being a little bit more anxious about this, if we really think about it. Because we like to know the definiteness of what's coming. And so the church for 2,000 years has been patiently ready and waiting. Individuals like yourselves for countless years and for countless a number of people have been waiting in anticipation to be ready for the second coming of Christ. And so that's why we begin, in a sense, these first Sundays in Advent, thinking about the second coming and not just the first coming. To think about a second coming for us in our life and what that means for us. And as Paul says, that we need to conduct ourselves in a way that reflects that second coming, that reflects the first coming and the second coming of Christ, and how important that is. And so when we think about these stories and about what Jesus is telling here, when we think about this for ourselves, what does that really mean for us? What does it mean for us to be ready? Because we need to be ready. But we can lose heart. We can lose patience. We can lose a sense of it's hopeless. But that's not it. We always are to have the hope that is coming, that God will come and rectify things. We often think of ourselves as living in a time and an age in which things are bad. And we can really think about it, and we are preoccupied with it. About wars and rumors of wars, threats to our country, threats to us as individuals, indiscriminate killing, disease that's rampant in many parts of the world. All the things that are that way. You see, that's the prophetic part of Advent, is to recognize that and to call that out, to call the injustice, to call the inequities, to call out all the things that are bad. But the other side is that we need to call out the hope. Every prophet in the Old Testament has a sense of hope. When you read through those lines, you may even get a little bit depressed as they're talking about Jerusalem and about God's people and about Israel and all the other things, just like our own world today. That it can be something that almost shackles us in depression. But the prophet always has that word of hope, because God is faithful. God will come through no matter what. No matter how hopeless it is, the hope is coming in the person of Jesus Christ. That God will come because there is hope. And the hope we reside in is the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. And so when the readiness seems to wane, when we don't think we are quite as ready as we should, or life just seems to drag us down, and so we don't become as ready for Christ's coming as we ought, there is always hope that God will bring and guide us through no matter what. Because really what for us is the second coming? The second coming for us really is our own death. Because then we've lived the life that God has given to us as a gift. We've lived that life and it's come to an end. And for some of us who are young, looks like a far, far dream. For some of us who are old and have gray hair, it's maybe just around the corner. But there is the coming of Jesus Christ into our life. There is how God comes to us in his second coming. That you and I, when we die, God comes to us. And we believe and hope that there, God comes to us because we are faithful. We are faithful and ready to receive him and to receive the kingdom of God in the fullest of sense. This last week I was in one of the stores in Arcadia, and I was in there and I was kind of in a hurry, but not entirely. And well, I come in and right away one of the, number of the people there, of course. So I come to one fellow and he's, how are you doing and so forth. And he was talking about Thanksgiving and he had a new grandchild and so forth. And they'd been to visit him over Thanksgiving and so forth. And then the other fellow that was there, I said what I wanted, and he said, oh, it's right over here. And so we went over there and kind of up in the aisle, and it's almost like he led me in a back, sort of back off of the main drag or main part of the store. And I said, because I had had the funeral a few years ago of a person he was kind of his soulmate. And so I said, well, how you doing? Well, he said, most people don't say much. Most say, oh, I'm fine, okay, it's good, life's going on, it's okay. Well, he says, no, I've been having a hard time. He says, I've had some health issues. And he kind of went on, he says, well, it's kind of lonely at times and kind of difficult. And I said, well, okay. And so then he went on and I said, well, what's your health issue? He said, well, I was diagnosed with stage 4 kidney disease. And I said, really? He said, but I've got good news. He says it's been redone and now it's stage 2. And so in that kind of recovery, in that kind of sense, he was realizing how his life was really on the edge. That he very easily could die. That this could return, this could get worse, and not progress for what he considered the better. That here was a man who seemed to me to be very wholesome, very energized about life. Nothing on the outside would give you any indication that he was in any kind of difficulty. But he was a guy who knew that his life was in question. But he was ready. He was ready for whatever came. And that's what we need to be. We need to be ready for whatever comes. And we ask God in the person of Jesus Christ to bring us through those times that seem to be difficult. Because they will pass. They will move on. But God is asking us in the person of Jesus to be ready for when our time comes. And so may the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, keep your hearts and your minds ready in Jesus Christ. Amen.